Namaskar everyone. Welcome to PYP Talks, Project Yug Parivartan Talks, in which we invite various eminent speakers from various domains to speak on a particular subject which is useful for our audience. It should add some value to the people's life and should help them synergize with the Project Yug Parivartan vision. Some of you would definitely know that Project Yug Parivartan is world's largest scope project being undertaken by defined values consultants and associated organizations, wherein there is an attempt to make Bharat Vishwa Guru by 4th June 2025. So in next 4 years, we would be conducting several such PYP talks, integrate several eminent speakers into the system, regularly invite them into various global summits, which we are now doing every month starting from June 2021. So from June 2021 to June 2025, these global summits will spread the ripple effect of Project Yug Parivartan to the entire world. So in this series, we have today invited Dr. Reema Dada from All India Institute of Medical Sciences, AIIMS, to deliver a talk on yoga, my health, my choice, or your health, your choice. Ultimately, it is our choice whether we want to remain healthy or not. Every step that we take, every action that we take in our life is our choice only. So if we choose to follow the discipline of yoga in its true shape, all the 8 limbs, Yam, Niyam, Asan, Pranayam, Pratyahar, Dharana, Dhyan, Samadhi, we can definitely become a yogi. Now, since last 15-20 years, you must have seen that there is a great emphasis on spreading the knowledge of yoga. And we have also got World Yoga Day declared by the United Nations every year, 21st June. People are now understanding the impact of this ancient wisdom in our physical, emotional, social, intellectual, and spiritual quotients. So it is really great to see, because if you see a few decades back, yoga and medical doctors were not in line and aligned to come together. But now this is becoming increasingly possible, and several evidences of that are now available with us, that several medical doctors, professors, and people from the allopathic background are also recommending the yoga. Within DVC, Defined Values Consultants, there are several platforms to do regular yoga asana, pranayam, dhyan, Gyan Yoga related platforms, discussion forums, debates, Karma Yoga related forums. All of them are there under the Project Yug Parivartan vision. So today's topic, Yoga, Your Health, Your Choice, will add one more jewel to the treasure that is being given to the people about their own potential. So let me just quickly introduce Dr. Reema Dada and hand over the mic to her to take it forward. PYP Talks, Yoga, Your Health, Your Choice by Dr. Reema Dada, Professor in the Department of Anatomy, All India Institute of Medical Sciences, AIIMS, New Delhi. Dr. Reema Dada is a professor in the Department of Anatomy, All India Institute of Medical Sciences, AIIMS, New Delhi. She is Fellow of National Academy of Medical Sciences, International Medicine Science Academy, and Academy of Standards and Ratings. She is actively engaged in teaching, research, and genetic diagnostic services. Dr. Dada is currently involved in research on genetic aspects of infertility, reproductive failure, recurrent ART, that is assisted reproductive technologies, failure, and idiopathic recurrent spontaneous abortion and childhood cancers. Since last 8 years, she is working on impact of yoga on the genome and epigenome. She also has the credit to establish the laboratory of molecular reproduction and genetics in the Department of Anatomy, AIIMS. Dr. Dada has been veneered with several national and international awards, including the ICMR National Award for Outstanding Contribution in the field of genetics and infertility. Her research on genetics of glaucoma is amongst the top 2% in the world. More than 150 original indexed articles of high impact, 65 chapters in books, and DBT workshop manuals are to her credit at present. Dr. Dada has delivered several plenary and over 85 invited lectures at various meetings and conferences. And today's session, the webinar, is adding to her list of achievements, and we wish her good luck to continue this and spread the wisdom to the people who need it and make this planet a more evolved civilization. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me invite Dr. Reema Dada on stage to deliver her talk. It will be a 1 hour plus some few more minutes talk, followed by around 30 to 45 minutes of question and answers. So you can ask direct questions to Dr. Reema after the talk is delivered. So please welcome Dr. Reema Dada.
Namaskar. I thank you, Mr. Hitesh Chandelji, for giving me this opportunity to deliver this talk on Project Yug Parivartan Forum. And I have started working on the impact of yoga on our health about 12 years back. And I think during the course of the talk, everyone would realize that how yoga positively impacts our health, promotes wellness, and has such a tremendous transformative path and causes a dynamic change in our gene expression. But the most important thing that we must remember is that we are brought up with this dogma, this central paradigm, that our health, our disease and phenotype, our biology is determined by our genes. It's so important to know, yes, that they do determine our biology, but there is something operating above the genes, which is actually determining our health and disease states, and that is our choices. And so the roadmap for today's talk is that firstly, I would explain to everyone that the genes are not our destiny. There is a huge controversy that whether we are the products of nature or are we the products of nurture. So I will first of all talk that why genes are not our destiny, not the blueprint of life, and how our choices actually determine our health. And when I say choices, it's our lifestyle, our habits, what we think, our thoughts, our emotions, our diet, and they program our genes in a semi-permanent way. When I say that, it means that if you have healthy habits, they upregulate gene expression patterns which are beneficial for our health. Means that, for example, if you practice yoga, and you will see that when I explain about that later, when you practice healthy habits, for example, positive thinking, you do yoga and meditation, you will see that you upregulate expression of over 500 genes, which overall promote health and wellness. They are upregulating expression of genes which are the antioxidant genes, the genes which are helping to maintain DNA integrity, which are maintaining immune homeostasis. They're increasing the telomerase level, so they're helping you to reduce your biological age. So we see that there is something which is operating above the genetic landscape, and that is known as epigenetics. And it's very, very important to know that this shows that this is such an empowering view that we can change the expression pattern of our genes, and this is transmitted to the future generations. So not only can by our healthy habits, we can switch on gene programs which are beneficial for us, but also that of our children and grandchildren. But on the downside, we have to also remember that it is bad choices which is going to switch on gene programs which are really not good for us, those inflammatory pathways, and they set the stage for chronic inflammation, which is going to ultimately lead to autoimmune diseases and even cancers. And we find that there are diseases which have shown a steep increase in the last few decades. And this very rapid increase in these diseases actually shows that these cannot be genetic in nature because our genomes are highly stable. So I'll just explain to you, because we have a very varied audience, what is the genome and what I mean by that. But before that, I would like to tell you that, so first talk would be that I would explain to you what is epigenetics, and I'll talk about what are the diseases which have shown a phenomenal increase and why a steep increase in the incidence of these diseases shows that they are not due to genetics. And because if they were due to genetics, we would find common diseases all over the world. And though we are identical, our genetic makeup, whether we stay in India or we stay in America or Africa or China or anywhere in the world, we are exactly identical. There's just a 0.1% variation, but we find that we all suffer different diseases. And therefore, it shows that it is our environment which determines our health rather than our genetic makeup. Yes, there are 2 to 3% genes which are the changes in those genes, the mutations, if they are there, they do cause the disease. Those are the genes which are highly penetrant. But in rest, all the other cases, we find that there are multiple genes that are involved. Each gene has a small additive effect, and those genes just increase your risk or susceptibility to develop the disease. They are not actually causal, and they interact with the environment to cause diseases which are known as complex lifestyle diseases. And we will also see that these lifestyle diseases, for example, like cardiovascular disease, hypertension, be it cancer, autoimmune disease, unexplained male factor, infertility, rheumatoid arthritis, depression, asthma, all these diseases have some common underlying mechanisms. For example, you find that stress, anxiety, depression, accelerated advanced biological age, chronic activation of the sympathetic nervous system, then this dysregulated immune response, a dysregulated gene expression, dysregulated blood flow, enhanced apoptosis are the key factors which are the ones which are found in all complex diseases. I'll give you the few examples that we are working on, like unexplained male factor, infertility, rheumatoid arthritis, glaucoma. Then I'm working on depression. And you will see that in all of them, the underlying mechanism is the same. And in this age of super specialization, when you have a very targeted approach to tackle a disease, it's important to remember that majority of these diseases have a strong have a very major psychosomatic component. And therefore, they need to be dealt by an integrated holistic approach which targets both the mind as well as the body. And nothing can be better than yoga. Yoga is a profound science of inner well-being. It is a science and technology which is the greatest gift which India has given to the world. And it is the reason why we find that India was the best in the world, the topmost in the world during ancient times. And we find that yoga, this mind-body intervention, targets every cell in the body. It not only promotes health, it prevents the onset of diseases. It can act as a powerful adjunct in the management of diseases. And it has also tremendous rehabilitative power. And yoga impacts at various levels. For example, it acts at your physical level. That's just a small effect of yoga when you practice asanas, where it increases your neuromuscular coordination, your balance, your flexibility, your range of movement. It tackles at the mental aspect when you do meditation, like in Raj Yoga, where you are able to have equanimity of the mind, balance, emotional resilience. It helps to increase your mind-body awareness, which is very, very important. And then it also helps you to reach deeper spiritual states. So that is known as the transcendental meditation, in which you are able to actually understand what is the meaning and the purpose of life. So yoga is such a profound science. And in this age of super specialization, and where we are leading lives which are so, which have resulted in such a steep increase in the incidence of lifestyle diseases, we need to adopt a method which is simple, easy to follow, and especially during COVID times when we're advocated to stay at home, we should practice this yoga with the family so that we enjoy optimal health and fitness. So I was talking about that I would be discussing that why there has been an increase in the incidence of lifestyle diseases, that all these lifestyle diseases, be it cardiovascular disease like hypertension, ischemic heart disease, Alzheimer's, dementia, or you have rheumatoid arthritis, autoimmune diseases, cancer, unexplained male factor infertility, or glaucoma, congenital, like primary open angle glaucoma. all these diseases have some common underlying mechanisms like there is chronic inflammation, there is stress, anxiety, depression, there is persistent activation of the hypothalamo-pituitary-adrenal axis, there is activation of the sympathetic nervous system chronically, there are shorter telomeres, so you have advanced biological age, you have dysregulated blood flow, dysregulated gene expression, as well as enhanced apoptosis. So they share some common underlying mechanisms, as I'll show you. And you will see that in this age of super specialization, yoga, which is a profound science of well-being, is the whole holistic integrated approach which targets every cell in the body. And as all these diseases have a major psychosomatic component, they need to be tackled by an approach which targets both the mind and the body and results in optimal health. So yoga has tremendous transformative power. It causes a dynamic change in gene expression. And in addition to that, it not only prevents the onset of diseases, promotes health, is a powerful adjunct in the management of complex lifestyle diseases, but also has tremendous rehabilitative potential. And the most important thing to remember is that yoga can be practiced by one and all, whether you are physically able or you're disabled, whether you are young, you are old, whether you're a male, you're a female, you are of any caste, creed, race, sex. So yoga transcends above that. And it is the greatest gift of ancient India to the whole world. So I was just explaining to you that this is the structure of a gene. This is just a sequence of alphabets, and any change in the nucleotide sequence was believed to cause a change in the gene expression. So it was believed that we inherit a set of genes from our father and a mother, and they determine our health and disease state. But now we know that there is something operating above this, our genes, which is actually determining our health and disease state, and that's our biology. So how did this concept of epigenetics come into being? It was seen that after it was deciphered that we came to know that what is the sequence of our genome, and we realized that we are 99.9% identical, whether we stay in India or whether we stay across in different continents. And we are 98% identical to that of a chimpanzee, and yet we are so phenotypically different. So it was thought that there is something which is operating, which is above the genetic landscape, and that is our lifestyle, our environment. And again, I'm emphasizing when I talk of lifestyle, it's our thoughts, our behavior, our social habits, our diet, whether we are sedentary, whether we are physically active, what we eat, all determines our habits. They all determine, they act on our genes, they leave an imprint on our genes, and that actually determines our health and disease state and our biology. It's also very, very important to understand that the genes are marked by our early life experiences. Why I'm emphasizing this is because it is usually seen that when couples plan to have a child, they improve their lifestyle, but it's important that these genes are carrying the signatures of all our lifestyle experiences, and thus they need to be, we need to be very careful of the choices that we make, because the choices that we are making are not only determining our health, but also the health of future generations. Because these epigenetic marks, that is the epigenome, is the genetics of free will. It is how we can change the output or the expression of the genes without any change in the nucleotide sequence. Initially, it was believed only a change in the nucleotide sequence could change the output of the genes, but now we know that the epigenome, that is what is operating above the genetic landscape by our thoughts, our free will, our diet, our lifestyle, all can modulate the gene expression. And that's very, very important because it tells us that we have a huge responsibility. The huge responsibility is this, that we are actually responsible for the integrity of our genome, right? So if we make healthy choices, not only are we going to be healthy, but we are also going to determine the health of our health and also that of the future generations. Now, it's very important here to understand that mostly men believe that, it's all dependent on the woman. and it's the woman who's going to be, determining how the child, the health and well-being of the child. But it's equally, or if not more important for the men. And I'll just explain to you why, because my studies actually began because after I did my MD, my PhD topic was on the genetics of male infertility. And I'll just tell you why it's so important, because the sperm is the only cell in the body which does not have adequate amount of antioxidants, because during development it sheds majority of its antioxidants, and its DNA repair machinery is majority silent. It just has two genes of the repair mechanism, and therefore if it suffers any damage, it cannot clear it, unlike the other cells. The other important thing I would like to tell you is there have been numerous studies which have been done in mice. And I'll just tell you, and this is so that all the men also pay heed, that they need to be aware, because the sperm is not going to be able to repair any damage if they lead unhealthy lifestyle. They did studies. What they did was they made male mice smell cherries. And when they were made to smell cherries, they were also given an electric shock. Several generations downstream, when their pups were made to smell cherries, they were not given the electric shock. It was found that their pups also shivered. That shows that every experience we have during our lifetime affects not only our lives, but also that of our future generations, our children, our grandchildren, the children, the great-grandchildren. So we have to treat our epigenome kindly, because we have to know that the genes are marked by early life experiences. So this is a picture which is actually showing you that it's not your genes which determine your destiny, but your epigenome. And what is the epigenome? It is the epigenetic landscape, which is determining which gene remains active at what particular time. And though we have an identical genome, that is the DNA content, the genetic code is identical in all the cells of the body. But the epigenome is different, and that determines that we have so many different cell types. And this epigenome is so highly dynamic. For example, when you have food, that those genes which are going to secrete insulin, they'll become open, they'll start expressing, whereas other genes will be silent. So the genome is very, very highly dynamic. And this epigenome is acted upon by various factors. For example, our diet, our health and disease states, our social habits like smoking, alcohol consumption, whether we use drugs of abuse, our gut microbiome. Let me highlight that the gut, we are a complex ecosystem in which there are hundreds of billions of microbes in our gut, and they secrete various factors which are very, very important for our mental health, as well as they secrete various factors which are helping in our immune homeostasis. And dysregulation and destruction of the gut microbiome by our unhealthy lifestyle, for example, by lack of sleep, by having highly processed food, high amount of non-veg food, and artificial sugars and sweeteners, all impact the gut microbiome and destroy its diversity. Drugs, our social interactions, our mental health, and our psychological state, yoga, all impact our epigenome. And as I just told you, healthy habits switch on good gene programs, and unhealthy social habits like drinking, smoking, having fast food, which is also known as the junk food, which is the standard American diet, which is a highly inflammatory diet, switches on unhealthy gene programs. For example, they switch on the inflammatory pathways. Inflammatory pathways are defense pathways. They're good if they're switched on for short periods, but if they're chronically active by having junk food or highly processed food, which is rich in trans fats, salts, sugars, these foods are very, very poor in fibers and micronutrients and phytonutrients, then it results in chronic inflammation, which sets the stage for autoimmune disease and even cancer. Now, this picture actually shows you that this lady is pregnant with a child. She's smoking. She not only affects the health of her child, but also that of her grandchildren, because this child has the germ cells which are going to give rise to his children. So it's important to know that now it's believed that biological parenting actually begins when the parents themselves are conceived. So it's so important that we take care of our health and mental well-being right from the time we ourselves are born, rather than just changing our lifestyle just 2 to 3 months prior to just planning to have a child. So the first thing I would like to also highlight, this is a topic which is highly unaddressed and one of the major causes of a lot of health issues, that is adverse childhood events. And it has been seen that about 67 to 68% children face adverse childhood events, and about adverse childhood events are seen in 28% of the children. And this is the cause of a huge number of diseases, a 12-fold increase in the incidence of suicides, depression, attention deficit disorders in children, non-allergic asthma, a huge increase in the chronic obstructive pulmonary diseases, cardiovascular diseases, depression, and suicide. In addition to that, we find that the younger population is facing a huge information overload. They are so much affected because of this, the effect of the internet and the social media. Then they have, because of the change of a society structure from a joint family to a nuclear families, then to broken families, and now single parent households, you find that the youngsters are facing a huge problem of stress, anxiety, depression, and we actually face a huge epidemic. I mean, our depression has reached epidemic proportions, and we see that very, very few people are really able to access, doctors for dealing with this. And again, why I'm showing this is because I will show you how yoga is able to help in this. In addition to that, I would like to tell you, I've just got this slide, though this is a lot of scientific jargon, but what I wanted to emphasize was, how do these early childhood events and what is happening due to maternal stress and maternal behavior when the mother herself is pregnant, how does it impact the health and well-being of her children and that of her future generations? It is because there are certain epigenetic marks. I told you that these lifestyle factors, behavioral patterns, dietary patterns do not cause any change in the nucleotide sequence. And this is very important because majority of these environmental pollutants and all, they are not carcinogens, they are not mutagens, but they still are impacting our health because they're changing the output or the expression of our genes. And that's because of the phenomenon of epigenetics. Now, what is epigenetics? As I told you, it changes the expression of our genes, and there are certain marks. Now, these are certain modifications. There are no changes in the nucleotide sequence, but there are some covalent modifications which occur in the proteins associated with the DNA or the bases of the DNA. Like there could be methylation of the DNA, like cytosine base, which results in silencing of the genes. There could be acetylation, which results in activation of the genes. We do not need to know all this right now, but what I just wanted to show you was that because of the presence of these epigenetic marks, these marks are heritable. They are transmitted from cell to daughter cells, and then they are transmitted to future generations. So our lifestyle choices are so important for our well-being and also that of the future future generations. So this is how we know that our DNA is bound around histones, and these histones have these amino ends, and these tails can undergo acetylation, methylation, numerous post-translational modifications, which are then going to determine which gene remains expressed, which gene is silent, and that is actually determining the epigenetic code. So that is how it is transmitted. So now I wanted to share with you, why has there been such a huge increase in the incidence of these lifestyle diseases, which are also known as complex diseases? It's because we have changed from largely a hunter-gatherer society to a society which is largely sedentary. A society which is always sitting in front of computers, especially during COVID times, and having fast food. Now, what happens? WHO recommends that we should be having about 150 minutes of moderate to intense physical activity, but it's been seen that 30% or more of the world's population is having high levels of inactivity and do not meet these guidelines. In addition to that, we have a diet which is very rich in processed food. Now, this is a diet which is very rich in trans fats, salt, sugars. This is a diet which is nutritionally depleted. And this is also known as the SAD or the DAD diet, which is the standard American diet or the deadly American diet. But unfortunately, in India, both in rural as well as urban setups, we are following that. And we can see that how every day the media is playing upon our minds, and especially on the minds of these younger children and the youth, and who are so overloaded with these market narratives that they are, I mean, even a person like me who knows all this does indulge, because I am also very fond of food. But what I wanted to show you was that this food, which is so processed, refined, rich in trans fats, salts, sugar, you can see so many coloring agents, so much preservatives. This food is highly just full of calories, but it is a totally nutrient depleted food. And that is why we find there's a huge increase in the incidence of complex lifestyle diseases. And even children in schools, they have seen 2 to 3 out of every 10 children has blood pressure. And we can see that diabetes, blood pressure and cancer cases are rising steeply in whether it's a rural or the urban setup. This is just an example to show you. We always say, there is a huge increase in the incidence of cancer. There's a huge increase in the incidence of diabetes. Oh, this is running as a family. We cannot do anything. But this slide is really important because it shows you that there's a very small role which is being played by our genes. But the major factor is the environment. And as I told you before, that there are 2 to 3% of genes which are mutations, which are penetrant, means that if you have a mutation, you will definitely have the disease, like the BRCA1 mutations, which cause breast cancer. In all the other cases, you find that there are multiple genes, and each gene has a small additive effect, and it interacts with the environment, the lifestyle, and that results in the disease. For example, you can see in cancer itself, the effect of a diet, tobacco infections, alcohol, obesity plays such a major role in the causation of cancer. And it's important to understand that all these factors are all dependent on our choices. So we can see that our entire pharma industry targets on disease. Okay, and we should aim, and because people are so have to dependent on buying medicines and treatment, get hospitalized, need treatment, it results in so many people going below the poverty line. And we should really aim to adopting an approach which targets wellness, health, and enhances our both physical and mental fitness. So today I'm going to be talking about yoga. And as you know that yoga was, propounded by Adi Yogi, who gave this information to the Saptarishis, and how it was spread throughout the world, and by Agastya Muni in the south. And it was Maharishi Patanjali who actually compiled them into the Yoga Sutras. And the most important thing to remember is this is practically the only approach which targets and gives you complete health, that is physical, mental, emotional, and social. It enhances mind-body awareness, results in deeper transcendental states to understand the meaning and purpose of life. It promotes health, wellness, prevents diseases, and acts as a powerful adjunct in the management of complex lifestyle diseases. And right from the time of the Indus Valley civilization, we have numerous relics which actually show you that the people were practicing yoga. And this is actually responsible that why our civilization and country was the topmost in various scientific fields, and because our sages and our people actually practiced yoga. So when I talk of yoga, I mean, it encompasses 3 things. One is asanas, pranayam, as well as meditation. I would like to highlight that when I talk of asanas, they just comprise of about 1.5% of yogas. But when we talk of yoga, people think it is synonymous with is synonymous with yoga. But the main aim of asanas is just that your body should be in alignment so that your trunk is upright and the spine maintains its curvature, so that you can do pranayam, that is the regulated breathing practices, and achieve a meditative state. And meditation is just a state of enhanced awareness in a non-judgmental way. So there are different types of yoga, and yoga actually helps to gain voluntary control over our involuntary functions. Now, there was a book by I wanted to show you 2-3 books which really helped me understand. Like when I used to talk of meditation, there was always a confusion that what is meditation and what is the mind, what is the brain, how like we say that how our karma determines our health. And so I just read this book recently, and I just made these small points to tell you all that it's worth reading this book, and it is amazing, and I had attended a workshop by this by transhuman consultants. There's by Mr. Paritosh Sharan, where he had explained. I mean, that helped me understand this book, where he explained to us that there are four types of communication. One is like Vaikri, Madhyama, Pashyat, and Paravani. And this Mind Your DNA is about this author who actually had this while meditation, got this download. It's something like how the Upanishads and Rig Vedas were written by our sages who got this while during who got this knowledge during meditation. And this book helps to explain what is the role of non-coding DNA. And it's a very, very interesting read. So I've got 2-3 books that one must read to help us enhance our understanding of what is mind, what is DNA. And these are very, very interesting reads. And other books are like by Paul Brunton, The Quest of the Overself, and the Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramhansa Yogananda. So the first topic that I'm going to deal with today is unexplained male factor infertility. And as you all know, I will first talk about these problems and how yoga helps to tackle them. So in the recent decades, there has been a very steep increase in the incidence of male infertility and a very rapid decline in the male reproductive health. And therefore, you find that a lot of people are resorting to having test tube babies. And we need to understand, the more the population goes in for having a test tube baby, there are many countries, for example, in Europe, in Netherlands and all, or in Denmark, one child in every classroom is born by assisted reproductive technology. And it's important to know that when we use this technology, we will need this technology more and more in the next generation. And why has there been such a huge increase in the incidence of these decline in the male reproductive health? It's believed that, again, it's due to the lifestyle. I'll just show you that. And along with that, we find that male reproductive health, and especially cancers and genitourinary abnormalities in the reproductive age group, have shown a huge increase. So as we all think that infertility is a problem of the female, but it's important to understand that in approximately half the cases, the problem is actually in the male. And when we get cases of male infertility, the first thing that we do is a semen analysis. We determine whether the person is having azoospermia, oligospermia, or they're having a lot of morphologically abnormal sperm with impaired motility known as oligoasthenoteratospermia, or there are a group of people which is known as unexplained male factor infertility. I'll talk about this today. Now, these are individuals, when you go for a semen analysis, everything is normal. So you should be fertile, but yet these people are infertile. And this is the category of people which our studies have shown that they are the ones who have high levels of DNA damage. And that damage is oxidative in nature. Now, what is oxidative stress? Now, oxidative stress is a condition where there is an imbalance in the free radicals. That is, there are more free radicals which are produced and there are less amount of antioxidants. Now, why we are told to have fruits and vegetables is mainly because they are loaded with antioxidants, right? So we see that the unexplained male factor infertility is mainly because of DNA damage and oxidative stress. So the damage is oxidative in nature. It's very, very important to understand, as I already told you, that the male germ cell is the only cell in the body whose DNA repair mechanism is silent. And therefore, if there is damage, it is not able to clear it. And it is dependent upon the oocyte to clear its damage. But if the oocyte is aged, as we delay marriage and delay having children, it may not be able to clear the entire damage. And if the damage is extensive, again, it cannot clear the damage at the time of fertilization. And therefore, this damage is transmitted to the offspring, who then has a higher risk of genetic, epigenetic diseases, childhood cancers, like complex neuropsychiatric disorders, as well as autosomal dominant genetic diseases. So why has there been such a huge increase in the incidence of these lifestyle, this in male factor infertility? It's because of these environmental pollutants. For example, you can see here, this is the water which is leached with insecticides and pesticides, and huge number of pollutants, and many of them are endocrine disrupting chemicals. They are known as, they mimic hormones, and these are anti-androgenic. And not only do they affect the male germ cell development, but they also cause oxidative stress. In addition to that, there are various products that we use in our daily life. For example, milk, which is packaged in these plastic packs, water we are drinking in these bottles, these plastic toys, and when we are having packaged food. Now, all these are coated with certain plasticizers, which are phthalates, which are anti-androgenic chemicals. And there was a study I recently read which showed that we are having about 15,000 microparticles of plastic when we drink water from these bottles. In addition to that, as I told you, we have a population which is chronically hungry and nutritionally starved, though they are overfed, a population which is resorting to smoking, alcohol consumption, high intake of non-veg food, a sedentary lifestyle, excessive use of cell phone. All this has resulted in man living in a sea of free radicals. And you can see there are studies which have proven beyond doubt that red meat kills and processed meat kills faster. And I wanted to show you that especially when you have non-veg food, you can wash the fruits and vegetables to remove insecticides and pesticides to a large extent. As I told you, they mimic estrogens, they are anti-androgenic. But when you have non-veg food, the non-veg food has these endocrine disrupting chemicals because the animals are grazing on these areas which are also sprayed with insecticides and pesticides. And these enter into the animal's protein and no amount of washing can remove it. And studies have shown that when mothers who are pregnant with a male fetus have non-veg food, it affects the male genitourinary development and affects his reproductive capacity. And so numerous studies have shown that junk food intake by men, women, obesity leads to cancers, excessive use of mobile phone results in infertility, and we are resorting to more and more children, couples having test tube children. And we should realize that if you are infertile and you have gone in for test tube babies, there could be numerous causes for which you go for test tube children. But if you are infertile and you have gone in for a test tube child, and it is possible that the next generation will also be infertile and would also need to resort to this treatment. So this is our study, which was shows you clearly that a huge number of factors causes oxidative stress. Now, if you look at these factors, majority of these are modifiable and preventable. And since sperm does not have a mechanism to repair itself, it's better to follow a policy of prevention is better than cure. You can see that psychological stress is one of the main factors because psychological stress also results in oxidative stress. Psychological stress results in the production of cortisol, and cortisol reduces the levels of antioxidants. And therefore, there is oxidative damage. And this oxidative free radicals, they damage both your nuclear DNA and your mitochondrial DNA. They target the telomeres, which are the biological clock. They result in production of this product, which is very important, and I'll just tell you why. The level, this is 8-hydroxy-2-deoxyguanosine. Why is this important? You need not remember the name, but I'll just show you some graphs later, because this is the base, which actually, this is the oxidative DNA adduct, which actually results in both mutations and epimutation. It results in mutations in the genome, and it also dysregulates the epigenome. And therefore, this damage to the nuclear and the mitochondrial DNA, shorter telomeres, makes our genome hypermutable, makes it genetically unstable, which results in infertility. But it can also result in, after fertilization, recurrent spontaneous abortions, which the mother experiences, congenital malformations, childhood cancers, complex neuropsychiatric disorders like schizophrenia, childhood depression, autism, and dominant genetic diseases in the children. So to combat oxidative stress, WHO recommends, and the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine recommends that we need 10 servings of fruits and vegetables. And you can very well imagine in our country how many people can really afford this. And I will show you how yoga is so beneficial for this. So our studies show that there's a huge population of people who are infertile, who are encountering recurrent spontaneous abortions, have congenital malformation, who have high seminal oxidative stress levels. So we also quantified the level of DNA damage, and you can see here that this is a technique known as COMET assay, where we actually label it with a fluorescent dye, and we quantify the level of fluorescence in the region of the head and also in the region of the tail. When you have long tails, it shows you that the DNA is fragmented, as you can see in the infertile cases. And in the healthy controls, you can find that majority of the sperm are having DNA which is concentrated in the region of the head, showing that there is good quality DNA. So we can also do this technique by another technique which is known as sperm chromatin structure assay. We do this in our lab to actually assess the level of DNA damage, and we see that the number of sperm towards the x-axis indicates the number with the damaged DNA, and you can see that as compared to the control where majority are towards the y-axis indicating the good quality sperm, in infertile cases the number of sperm towards the x-axis is very high, indicating there is damaged DNA. So we also studied the telomere length, which I told you is the biological clock, which are like the ends of the shoelaces. And with every cell division, the telomeres become shorter. But when you have oxidative stress, the telomeres shorten much faster. And so our studies have shown that you need optimal levels of free radicals to maintain telomere length. So we were able to establish the cutoff levels beyond which a couple cannot conceive spontaneously. And we also quantified the level of this base, which I told you induces mutations, epimutations, and this directly correlates with the unhealthy social habits like smoking, alcohol consumption, and exposure to insecticides and pesticides. And it's known that this base induces de novo germline mutations, right? And our studies have shown that when fathers, now what we did the studies, there were several studies which showed that children who have sporadic cancers means the cancer is not running in the family. It was seen that the fathers of these children usually smoked. So what we did, we actually studied cases where the children had sporadic cancer, and we studied the DNA quality of the sperm. And you can see that, and where to determine what is the type of DNA damage, we quantified the level of this oxidative DNA adduct. And you can see here that the level of this adduct in fathers of children who had retinoblastoma, which is a childhood cancer, is very high as compared to that of the controls. And you can see that this damage had passed on to the next generation. This is the level, this is the fathers of these children, and these are the children itself with the retinoblastoma, that they have such high levels of this base as compared to healthy children. And you can see that the presence of this base results in de novo germline mutations and epimutations, and the presence of this base in children results in post-zygotic mutations and is the cause of these childhood cancers and increased load of genetic and epigenetic diseases in the offspring. So as I told you, we picked up cases which were sporadic, in which father and mother did not have cancer. And the other important thing we actually found in the study was that majority of these children are the last born child. And this is important because as parents delay having child, as there's a delay in the age of marriage, and there's a delay in the achieving parenthood, they're delaying because of professional or whatever reasons, you find that that time the mitochondria tends to accumulate mutation because mitochondria produces energy and produces free radicals, and that damages the free mitochondria, which produce more free radicals, and therefore the DNA damage accumulates in the father's sperm, right? And so you usually find that these sporadic cases are associated with advanced paternal age. So this is what I wanted to show you. This is the retinoblastoma, which is a childhood cancer. And you can see that as compared to the normal levels, the fathers have very, very high levels of free radicals and the DNA damage. So not only infertility, we also studied the role in various factors like recurrent pregnancy loss, and again find high levels of free radicals as well as DNA damage in the fathers of these children. Now I'll talk of the impact of yoga on the sperm genome and epigenome in various complex diseases. So in this group of infertile men who had high levels of DNA damage, we studied all parameters pre and post intervention. And you can see that when these people practice yoga, there is a significant decline in the free radical levels, which occurs within 21 days. And to show DNA improvement, it takes some time, which I'll just show you in another slide. But what is most important is you can see there were two groups, one which practiced yoga and the one which did not practice yoga. And you can see that there is such a significant increase in the total antioxidant capacity. Now, as I told you, the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine says that you need to take 10 servings of fruits and vegetables. And you can see that if you do yoga without spending anything, you can increase the total antioxidant capacity. In addition to that, I'll show you a huge number of factors, some of which I'm going to show you today. But it's yoga is actually modulating and unraveling the pharmacy which we have within. And we need to tap to the inner potential, to this inner pharmacy, to upregulate our defense mechanism, and that will prevent the onset of diseases. So you can see that we buy such expensive antioxidants from the market, but yoga is increasing the level, the total antioxidant capacity. And how does it do it? It increases the expression of genes which are actually secreting antioxidants like superoxide dismutase, catalase, glutathione. And also, this was the first study to show that yoga causes an increase in the expression of sirtuins. Now, sirtuins are the longevity genes. They are the defense genes, which was believed to increase only after intake of 100 glasses of red wine. Now, it's so important to know that red wine causes an increase in resveratrol, and therefore that causes an increase in sirtuins. But our study has shown for the first time that if you do yoga independent of intake of red wine, you can actually increase the levels of sirtuins. And also you can see that you are given antioxidants so that your oxidative stress and because oxidative free radicals damage all carbohydrates, proteins, the membranes, the DNA, the RNA. So we have seen that by doing yoga, the level of this oxidative DNA adduct goes down. Now, this is a very, very important finding because majority of the antioxidants, though they can act on the sperm membrane and it can act on various cytoplasmic structures, but they are really not able to reach within the nucleus, they act on the nuclear DNA. But yoga, by increasing the expression of various genes within the DNA, helps to, by increasing the expression of genes, upregulating the defense mechanism, enhancing the expression of various genes which help in DNA repair. Yoga is actually causing a significant decline in the level of this DNA adduct, which causes mutations and epimutations. Now, this is such an important finding. This is the first study again to show this, that yoga actually decreases the level of this oxidative DNA adduct, which can decrease the genetic and epigenetic disease burden in the next generation and also reduce the incidence of cancers in the infertile male himself. So we also see that yoga increases the telomerase activity. Now, this is another important finding because millions of dollars are spent every year on research to, generate certain substances which can increase your longevity to help you remain young. Now, the main factor which helps you remain young is that your telomeres shorten at a slower age, so that your biological age is much younger than your chronological age. The key factors which regulate telomere shortening is oxidative stress and a decline in the free radical levels. And you can see that yoga decreases oxidative stress and enhances telomerase activity. So it's the best way to remain younger. And you can also see that by acting on the epigenome, yoga is also helping to regulate the RNA levels because it targets both the genome and the epigenome. So you can see that as compared to the controls, you can see that the levels are dysregulated. And when you practice yoga, because it is acting on the epigenome, you find that the methylation marks are re-established. So we find that because of oxidative stress, there is a decline in the methylation mark, there is hypomethylation, but yoga impacts the genome and the epigenome, and a huge number of genes which are helping in fertilization, implantation, sperm development are getting hypomethylated. So there is an enhanced expression of those genes. Now you can see that, as I told you, oxidative stress levels decline within 21 days. But to show significant improvement in the DNA quality, you actually need you need to practice yoga on a daily basis for about 6 months. And it's important that we actually integrate yoga into our lifestyle. And you can see here that the quality of the DNA has improved and the number of sperm towards the x-axis has gone down, showing that there is a significant improvement in the DNA quality. Now I'll talk how yoga impacts the autoimmune disease, that is rheumatoid arthritis. Now what I again wanted to show you, be it yoga, be it unexplained male factor infertility, be it rheumatoid arthritis, cancer, be it glaucoma, depression, all of them have a same mechanism: inflammation, oxidative stress, shorter telomeres, stress, anxiety, depression as the underlying mechanism, dysregulated gene expression, and you will see yoga how it targets that and it's how it is acting on this. Now, rheumatoid arthritis is a very severe, chronic, progressive, painful arthritis. And again, this has a very strong element of comorbid depression because the person's quality of life declines. And because of that, people know it's progressive. They will be dependent on drugs which have numerous side effects. And in addition to that, they know that they cannot perform their daily chores. They need to be dependent on others. And thus, we studied, this was a randomized controlled trial where we studied what is the impact of yoga in these individuals. Now, initially it was believed that because they had such disfigured joints, it was such a painful arthritis, it was believed that these people will not be able to do it. But when we started this study, we find that initially when they did loosening practices, after about a month, and in some people in 45 days, the people who were coming on wheelchairs, on crutches, started walking on their own. And they insisted on doing all yoga practices like the other people were doing who did not have rheumatoid arthritis. And you can see that when we studied their disease activity scores, there was a significant decline. Now, these were randomized controlled trials. So there was a group which was doing yoga and the group that was not doing yoga. Both were on standard disease-modifying anti-rheumatic drugs. And you can see that the disease activity score goes down. And the level, this is the Beck Depression Inventory, which shows you the severity of depression. And you can see that the severity of depression has gone down. To understand why, so you can also see the CRP levels, the acute phase reactants go down. Now, what is just the significance of this? It shows that yoga is upregulating the expression of various genes which are helping to decrease inflammation. And various key factors, like we did a huge panel of inflammatory cytokines. I've just done a few to show you that this arthritis targets the joints, and the joint damage is caused by IL-17 and TNF, and both show a significant decline. And the extra-articular symptoms which occur in the brain, in the heart, in the lung, in the skin are due to IL-6, which shows a decline also. This is very important because you can see even in COVID, you find increase in CRP levels, and then when there is a cytokine storm, there's increase in IL-6. And you have to spend, very expensive, the monoclonal antibodies targeting IL-6, and steroids are given for that. You can see that yoga is actually helping to decrease the levels of CRP as well as these inflammatory cytokines. In addition to that, you find that the anti-inflammatory cytokines, they show an increase. So, and we find that even in those cases which had a susceptibility genotype where the HLA-G levels were low, because they had a genotype which was decreasing the levels of this, even those cases showed an increase. So yoga was causing a decrease in the level of genes which were causing inflammation, increase in expression of genes which are anti-inflammatory. Again, it is unraveling with the pharmacy which is within and causing an expression of genes which are helping to maintain immune homeostasis, and they are helping to re-establish immunological tolerance. You can also see that the population of cells which are producing the inflammatory cytokines is going down, and the population of cells which are actually good for us, the regulatory cells which maintain immune homeostasis, goes up. And again, like I told you, that oxidative stress goes down. This slide was just to show you that there are common underlying mechanisms. The oxidative DNA adduct goes down. And we see, as I told you, that oxidative stress is produced because of free radical, because of dysfunctional mitochondria. This is the first study to show you that yoga actually impacts the mitochondrial DNA. And we see that the mitochondrial membrane potential improves post-practice of yoga. There's increase in expression of various genes which are maintaining mitochondrial integrity. The NAD levels go up. Now, NAD level is a very critical molecule because this actually goes down with aging. And studies have shown that with decline in NAD levels, the nuclear mitochondrial crosstalk is affected, because of which ATP production suffers, and therefore with age we have less energy. But now NAD levels go up post. This is the first study again to show this, that NAD levels go up post practice of yoga, and also the mitochondrial copy number increases post practice of yoga. Now I'll just talk of glaucoma, which is known as Kala Motia. And again, in this diseases, why do you need meditation? Now, it was believed that initially it was believed that we all know that glaucoma, primary open-angle glaucoma, especially that we have done, is a complex disease. And in this also, there is increase in the intraocular pressure. And it was believed all the drugs initially were targeted at decreasing the intraocular pressure. But now we know that there are several mechanisms like increase in inflammation, oxidative stress, decrease in the neurotrophic factors, inflammation of the glial cells. And our studies showed that these various factors which are causing inflammation, they show a downregulation. Factors which enhance apoptosis show a downregulation, whereas those key factors which are promoting neuroplasticity, which are regulating the blood flow in the retina, they show an increase in expression. And therefore, it was seen that, especially when in cases which are having glaucoma, we advocate pranayama and meditation. We see that yoga is able to decrease the intraocular pressure, enhance the retinal ganglion cell life because it promotes neurotrophic factors, neurotrophin production, helps in better drainage of the aqueous humor also. So now I'll talk of depression. I have already talked of comorbid depression. Now I'll talk of depression that is a major depressive disorder. And you can see that India is one of the most depressed countries in the world. And again, these were randomized controlled trials, and there were two groups, one which did yoga, which is shown in gray, and the black ones who did not do yoga. So you can see that the severity of the depression declined significantly in the group that practiced yoga. And why did that happen? Because there was production of, now mainly depression occurs when there is a decrease in the level of serotonins. And the most commonly sold drug in the market are serotonin analogs, and they have numerous side effects. And what's most important to remember is that yoga causes an increase in the expression of various factors like these BDNF, DHA, they are like brain vitamins, they nourish the neurons, and melatonin. Now, these are key factors because they promote neuroplasticity. What is neuroplasticity? It is how the brain adapts to various stresses and undergoes changes and adaptive changes. Initially, it was believed that we are born with a set of neurons and they do not, increase in number. But yoga causes an increase in the gray matter. There is increased gyrification of certain areas of the brain like prefrontal cortex, the hippocampus, the memory center, the hippocampus, the cerebellum. There's an increase in the gray matter. There is an increase in the white matter. And this is very, very important. It's not only important that we practice yoga only when we have a disease or when we have depression or some problem like that. If all of us practice yoga, especially even children, you can see that these factors which nourish the neurons, which promote neuroplasticity, they actually help in increasing concentration, cognition, attention, learning, memory. It helps you to keep you calm. It increases your mindfulness. So this is so important that we actually practice yoga and enhance our mental well-being and increase our emotion and become emotionally resilient. And again, you can see the level of this factor, cortisol, which is a stress hormone, goes down. The inflammatory cytokines go down. It's important because when people have high levels of stress, anxiety, depression, they tend to age faster. Their telomeres shorten at a much faster rate. And you can see that these people actually had shorter telomeres, but with a lower telomerase activity, but that increased after they practiced yoga. So yoga helps to slow down the rate of aging. And a number of genes which were dysregulated, their expression is enhanced, especially the repair genes. So when you have chronic stress and depression, it increases your chances of getting cancer. You can see the tumor suppressor genes have gone down, but yoga helped to increase the expression of those genes. And whatever be your genotype, we saw that the group that practiced yoga, there were about 60% cases which showed remission as compared to 33% which were on drugs. And all 4 domains of quality of life showed a significant improvement. Now I'll just talk of aging. These are the last few slides. And as you know, that majority of the research is now focused on living longer and healthier lives. And though we are living longer, but we are not really healthier, and the diseases start setting in at a much younger age. And diseases, these complex lifestyle diseases, which were occurring at 55, 65, 75 years, are now occurring as young as 20, 25 years. So let me tell you what our studies have shown us. Our studies have shown that if you practice yoga, you can actually reduce your biological age, so that even if you are, say, 70 years, you could actually be just about 45, 50, 55 years, because the telomeres, which are our biological clock, are actually targeted by oxidative stress, and there's a decline in the telomerase activity, but yoga causes an increase in the decline in the free radical levels and increase in the telomerase activity. One of the theories which has been put forward for aging is the mitochondrial free radical production theory, that free radicals produced by mitochondria are the ones which damage the mitochondria, because they are byproducts of ATP production, and that actually results in aging. And our studies have shown that yoga impacts the mitochondrial health. And this is the first study to actually show that yoga improves the mitochondrial integrity. It increases the mitochondrial copy number, increases the expression of various genes which are required for ATP production, decreases oxidative stress, increases the expression of NAD active levels, improves mitochondrial potential, and thus increases mitochondrial integrity. And thus you can see that if you adopt yoga, your nuclear and the mitochondrial DNA integrity improves, and yoga positively impacts your epigenome. So now it's your choice, that you need to treat your epigenome kindly and make healthy choices. Now it's your choice whether you adopt yoga then and you determine your health, and that is actually so strongly determined by your choice. And I hope that by this lecture, you do realize that how important we integrate this yoga, which has such a tremendous transformative power, so that not only we improve our health, but the health of future generations. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Reema, for such a wonderful detailed analysis and representation of data, as well as the concepts, which some of which we would have known earlier as well, but now several more is added to it, and it has revalidated several beliefs that yes, yoga is the way to go. In fact, yoga should be the universal religion that everyone should follow on this planet now. Somebody was asking on the chat also that in such a polluted environment, how can we do yoga and how can we ensure that all the benefits can be achieved? So basically, yoga brings us back to our origin, which is perfect in body, perfect in mind, and perfect in consciousness. So if we can keep ourselves there for a longer duration, the body will definitely get the power and strength to fight with the diseases, both physical as well as the mental diseases. So now, in fact, it's no more just a choice, but actually it is mandated by the ecosystem that we all include yoga, all 8 limbs of yoga into our daily routine.
Absolutely.
So all this data, all this information, it is so much valuable, and all of that has come into one presentation. I would definitely love to see it again and again, and I hope the audience would also like to see it again. Now we have several people who have questions now. Some of the questions were there on the chat box, some of them were in Q&A section. So I'll just read the questions and you can respond to them.
Right.
Okay, so let me just go through the question. One of the question I have responded, so you can also share your thoughts on it. It is from Mr. Anu Bagla. He says that I understand the benefits of yoga and naturopathy in health. How can I implement it more sincerely and completely?
I think that yoga should be integrated into our daily practice, like just like we have food every day. I think it's as important that we do it daily, whether we do it for 20 or 30 minutes, but we should be doing it daily. For example, and it should incorporate both asanas, pranayama, and meditation. Once you realize the benefits, I think nothing will hold you back. And once we know how important it is for our health and complete mental health, rather than spending on disease and in hospital, it's better we spend at least half an hour with ourselves and with our families and practice yoga. And nothing can be better when we are within the house, and nowadays we can't even go outside. It's better we practice yoga. But see to it that when you practice yoga, you are doing it mindfully. It should not be that the television is on and we are all talking away. Do it with full attention that you, when you are doing yoga, it should be only yoga at that time.
Dear doctor, we are all, the life itself is the product of nature. When the whole nature is so polluted, how an individual with his yogic practices can rebuild from a unhealthy to a healthy condition?
As I told you that yoga is such a healthy practice. It is the science of well-being. You are within this polluted environment. When you are practicing yoga, you are upregulating so many, about 500 genes, which are helping to maintain your health. The repair genes, the cell cycle regulator genes, the antioxidant genes, their levels are increasing. So I know you cannot leave your environment, but at least with your environment within your body, you can improve by practicing yoga. Like there are government recommendations, don't go out in the morning, don't go out in the evening, especially even when there was no COVID, there were these guidelines because there was such high levels of environmental pollutant. So why not practice yoga within your house? When the weather is better, you can go outside also and do it. But when you are enhancing the level of various genes which are improving your DNA quality, acting on the epigenome, increasing the expression of various genes which are antioxidant genes, the DNA repair genes, you are enhancing your fitness with whether whatever environment you are in. In addition to that, you know, you are raising the level of you're energizing your body by pranayam, and, you know, energizing your auras, like the pranmaya kosh. And, you know, you will not be affected by diseases when your levels of energy are so high, right?
Great. And in fact, I would also like to add to it that ultimately the pollution is not a problem till the time your body has the power and strength to fight with it. So no matter how much pollution is there outside, if our internal system is regulated and strengthened, then we won't feel too bad about the pollution, right? So through yoga, we enable that strength. So once that strength is enabled, no matter what pollution is outside, we will be able to fight with it. So we have a choice, just like the topic of today's session is your health, your choice. So now you have a choice to enhance your internal system so that you can fight with the pollution better, right? And
yes, I would also like to add something to this. This was something which I read again in a book by that Anandi Ravinath, Mind Your DNA, where she explains beautifully the need of the hour is that we all meditate together. When you do yoga, you can raise the level because your individual consciousness merges with the universal consciousness. You can raise the level of your consciousness. So this is very, very important of improving. Maybe we can improve the whole, this quality of the energy and vibrations by doing this.
Exactly. So when we do it on our internal system is not disconnected with the macrocosm, that is external system. So when our body and mind starts vibrating in a different frequency, automatically some contribution is going towards the macrocosm also to repair it. Right. So I think that's like both self-realization and self-actualization will help you there.
Right. Yeah, on large this practice of yoga, I think even we can revive environment also.
Oh yes, definitely.
Yes.
Actually,
yes.
we are. If we follow all the 8 limbs, we can, non-violence in thought, non-violence in action, and everything. We will take care of the planet also. Definitely, definitely. And like they say that if you shift to a vegetarian diet, you can prevent half the carbon footprint because of the killing animals and this. So definitely, if we follow yoga is a way of life. It's I think nothing can be healthier and beneficial for the planet as well.
Okay, great. Thank you, sister. Thank you, brother.
Thank you, Ji Basavaraj ji. Our next question is from Mr. Sarath Sahu. Sarath ji, please ask your question.
Hi, Dr. Dada. This was very nice study, and you have presented very scientific way. Did you just did you compare this is whatever you are talking is, I believe, is like a physical part of yoga. Is that correct? Like, did you compare like another group with exercise only? Like, say no exercise yoga, yoga and exercise. And I believe that exercise might have also similar effect on this, like gene expression and all these things, post translational modification, like DNA methylation, all these things you have presented. So that might have something. So that might have been better if you could compare that as well.
Yeah, like when I talk of yoga, I am not only meaning asanas, I mean pranayam and meditation. When we did glaucoma, initially we had all the three. Then we had a group which was just doing meditation. And but I would like to emphasize one thing very clearly. We are doing studies in which we are having active groups, like group doing dancing, group doing just cycling, to compare the effect with yoga. But I would like to emphasize that exercise is not yoga. It's very important to remember that yoga causes parasympathetic dominance and thus upregulates rest, DNA repair pathways. Whereas when you do exercise, especially when people do extremes of exercise too much, it activates the sympathetic nervous system. Any kind of physical activity, any kind of physical activity will increase your endorphins. Definitely, it will make you feel good. But when you do physical exercise, you get tired after that. Whereas yoga never makes you feel tired, it energizes you. Whereas when you do physical activity where you come back exhausted, it activates your sympathetic nervous system, leads to fatigue. You do feel good because endorphins are released. So, and now we are doing studies where we are comparing a group doing yoga versus a group doing just meditation and a group doing, cycling, dancing, and other forms of physical activity. We are already doing that. Studies are ongoing.
Yeah, that
But
would definitely help.
did you publish this data, like in some scientific journal? Did you publish somewhere this data?
No,
Or,
this study, this initially we didn't do it. We had passive controls who were doing nothing, who were just on drugs. But now we are doing this study. We have expanded. Now it's ongoing.
okay. Are you also working along with that Ayush, like other kind of like Ayurvedic and Ayurvedic medicines and all these things, like
No,
like along with
our
and
studies are funded by Ayush Ministry only, and we have collaborations with the center, the Chaudhary Brahm Prakash Institute of Ayurveda.
suppose someone has some acute problem, say kidney problem or liver problem and all these things. Is it advisable to do yoga, and whether it can help along with along with the medication and all these things? Is it advisable, or it has to be taken with doctor's advice and all?
See, whenever you practice yoga, it should always be done under a trained person. Initially, when you learn it, if you have any medical condition, you must tell the trained instructor. And especially when you have an acute condition, you must take the advice of a doctor and tell him, so that you, whether initially maybe it's an acute intervention is required, so you need modern medicine. And then yoga will help to revive health. But when sometimes you need an acute intervention, you should go in for that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Right, thanks. I hope these questions are helping other participants also to understand finer aspects of it. Our next question is, do autoimmune diseases like rheumatoid arthritis appear and disappear, and appear and disappear?
Yes, in any autoimmune diseases, you have periods of remission. When they disappear, then they appear to disappear. They are there, but very mild, and then they reappear. There are relapses. And if you practice yoga, like we have seen in rheumatoid arthritis, the periods of remission will be much longer. The symptoms will be much milder. The dosage of drugs that you require will be much lower. The overall quality of life will improve. Since your psychosomatic component, which is the comorbid depression, the severity decreases, that also helps to regulate your immune response. See, all autoimmune diseases occur because of a dysregulated immune response. The body is fighting against your self-antigens. And that the immune response will get regulated if you do yoga. It maintains immune homeostasis.
Great. Okay, so our next question is from Mr. Gopi Krishna Kidambi. He says, good evening to one and all. For glaucoma, which type of pranayama and meditation are required to be done that help in curing?
Okay. Now, I would like to emphasize that when you are doing for glaucoma, like we do not advocate any forward bending postures. Kapal Bharti has to be done very, very gently or you don't do it. We advocate Anulom Vilom. Okay. And then we tell them to do meditation, which is basically we tell them to just focus on their breathing. Okay. Just focus on their breathing and try to get your breathing rate to about 6 per minute or lower than that. That helps because when you do pranayam, it helps to stimulate these olfactory nerve, which is one of the most richly innervated mucous membranes. And that then stimulates the olfactory bulb and then helps to regulate, affects the brainstem centers, which are the centers where you have the parasympathetic center, right? And that helps you to gain voluntary control over your involuntary functions. And that helps to regulate your intraocular pressure.
Great. Our next question is from Mr. Devesh Singh. He says that first of all, thanks to Dr. Reema for enlightened session over practicing the yoga and given us her precious time. In addition to this, many, many thanks to Hitesh ji to introduce her to our family. My question to Dr. Reema is as follows. Can you throw some light over the concept which is promoted by some of the companies like V-Roots and claiming that they diagnose through the genes and DNA and suggest the possible disease by which we are going to suffer, and hence we can easily change the lifestyle?
I didn't get the first part of the question.
Can you throw some light over the concept which is promoted by some of the companies like V-Roots, V-I-E Roots, and claiming that they diagnose through the genes and DNA and suggest the possible disease by which we are going to suffer, and hence we can easily change the lifestyle?
Yes, there are many companies which are able to, especially diseases which are running in families. See, diseases are classified into different types. There are some diseases which are monogenic, which segregate in families, like, they're autosomal recessive, dominant, X-linked dominant, recessive. What I talked today was lifestyle diseases, complex diseases where there is role of genes and environment. It's important. Sometimes it's important when you are able to diagnose that, okay, this gene, this mutation is there in the family. As I told you, there are 2 to 3% genes. When you have a mutation in those genes, you will definitely develop the disease. They will not be affected by yoga. Maybe yoga will be able to affect the psychosomatic component, it's the stress part of it. But in the other diseases in which there are number of genes, number of environment, those genes will just increase your risk. They are not causal. They increase your susceptibility to develop the disease. In those cases, yoga would be helpful. Very helpful. It is helpful. It's
okay. So we had 2 questions from Dr. Paramanand Shukla, who has left because he has his own yoga session right now. So his question was, which yoga asana increases the strength of our body 10 times? Is there something like this?
I don't know 10 times, but I don't know 10 times, but like people with depression, we tell them to do Surya Namaskar. It's so powerful. With everything, I think for like even for the people with infertility, we do mainly exercises which are, asanas which are going to increase your pelvic blood flow. But for Surya Namaskar is very helpful. I don't know 10 times, I'm not sure, but they are helpful.
Yes, it's a too generic question, but yes, some level of multiplier factor would be there. Okay, next question from him was, which is the most useful asana for women in pregnancy to give birth normally without surgery or C-section?
Actually, I'm not aware of that. The best thing would be to consult the yoga instructor. We have a very good yoga instructor. They are able to know which is the best one to do at which trimester of pregnancy, which will increase your flexibility, and which are the best. I think she would be the best to advise you. Okay. I'm not the right person for this.
Okay, so that would affect the economy of medical science if we get more of normal deliveries than C-sections. This was on a lighter note. Next question is, nowadays there is a lot of problems regarding the time period in the male, and the disease of premature ejaculation is increasing. What is its solution through yoga?
Though we have not worked on premature ejaculation, But ejaculation is a vascular phenomena. The blood flow to the penis increases, right? That's required for ejaculation and then for erection. And we know that yoga increases the levels of nitric oxide synthase, and that nitric oxide regulates the blood flow. But we have not worked on it. But definitely after your question, I will read up in PubMed if there are articles for this. And we were actually thinking of working on this after we started our studies on infertility. We have not been able to do it because of the pandemic for last 2 years. But definitely I think there are papers because it regulates the blood flow. So it will help in this, definitely.
Okay.
But I do not know exactly because I have not worked on it, but I'll definitely read over it.
Right. So I would like to add something to it, which is a non-clinical answer to it. See, ultimately, when we eat any food, our food is 5 elements. When we eat the food, it passes through 7 stages of refinement, starting from the plasma, then blood formation, then fat, bones, everything is made up of food only. Then finally, after all the 7 tissues are formed, which we call as Sapta Dhatu, the final essence is called as Virya, which is like semen. Now it is the same energy. Semen is our energy, which is the final essence of the food. Now either it will go downwards or it will go upwards. If it is going downwards, it will go into the sexual energy direction. And if the same semen is picked up through various yoga asanas and pranayam and digested in the body and uplifted in the upper chakras, then it becomes spiritual energy. Now, when the spiritual energy is increased, then it helps us hold the ejaculation for a longer time. So that way people can even enjoy intercourse better than what they do without doing yoga. So yoga actually helps us in enhancing our sexual health and affects helps us in reducing the premature ejaculation as well. So this is the spiritual answer to this question. Clinically, of course, you can do some test on that based on the study, and then you can publish it. Okay. Next question is, so there is a long description which is posted by Mr. Anup Bagla. Okay, he's mentioning about some of the diseases like circulation of the blood vessels and nerve plexuses that affect circulation, quality of the blood, and the blood circulation. How can I heal above issues?
Actually, I was reading about this that majority of the cardiovascular diseases like ischemic heart disease, when you have atherosclerosis and deposition of cholesterol plaques in the blood vessels, which are then leading to ischemic heart disease, angina, and these issues like myocardial infarction. Now, a very major component is played by inflammation in these disorders. And so when you decrease inflammation, you can decrease the incidence and improve the blood flow of these in the circulatory system. And definitely when you do your pranayam, you increase the oxygen intake. Your lungs are able to expand to their maximum capacity. So this is how it is able to improve. And when you are doing Kapalbhati, you're removing all the carbon dioxide, and so you have more space for the inhalation of oxygen.
Okay, great. So in the meantime, I have got 2 more questions. One is a continuation of question from Mr. Gopi Krishna Kedambi. Many thanks for your previous reply. One more question, please. Is interstitial lung diseases, ILD, is it curable? Do pranayam and meditation help in curing the same? If so, kindly suggest the types to be done.
I have not worked on interstitial lung diseases, and definitely yoga is going to help you because see, normally also we are using a very small portion of a lung capacity, right? And in interstitial lung diseases, because there is a lot of fibrosis and your lung capacity decreases, it will help to expand the alveoli which are not expanded. So it will maximize your capacity when you do deep breathing. Also, people with interstitial lung disease have high levels of stress and depression because it's a very difficulty in breathing and they are not able to get optimal oxygen levels. They are breathless. So yoga is definitely going to help them. Definitely going to help them. They must practice yoga. They must do pranayam. It is going to help them.
Okay, great. Our next question is from Ms. Sangeeta Gandhi.
Yeah, hi. I'm Ashu Gandhi and my wife Sangeeta is sitting along with me.
Okay.
Two things that I'd like to ask Dr. Reema Dada as you being in AIMS, you would have come across many patients who have so-called recovered from COVID, but after a few months later, post-COVID complications are there, which are usually untraceable to a large extent. That could be fever coming up and breathlessness, very common, lack of energy in limbs, fatigue, breathlessness. All these things are coming up a few months after they have recovered. Now, two things are there. First of all, this will be having not this will be specific not only to India but all over the world who have patients who have been afflicted by whether it's asymptomatic or symptomatic or whether they have been admitted in hospital and recovered and come back. So it's a vast expanse field. Now, are you planning to do a kind of research whereby parallelly we are trying to, and right now the data will be very raw and you have patients at hand, a lot of patients who have just recovered. Are you planning to dip into this pool and do a research as to how these complications could be developing over a period of, and new more complications could be coming up after some time? Hopefully not, but it could be, as seen the trend. So are you planning to do some kind of a research on a big and sustained basis? It could run into a couple of years and cover lots of people over there. And this could also be a platform for other diseases which will be, or pandemics which could be coming ahead a few years later. Okay, so what I'm saying, are you planning to use this pandemic as a resource tool to create some basic data, collect it and do research on it and keep it ready for the next pandemic as such?
So actually a lot of studies, I mean, a lot of research is being done now on COVID, and I see that the AIMS is also encouraging a lot of research and numerous other agencies also. I am not doing that research on COVID, but I know that there are some short and long-term studies which are studying the effect, the long-term complications and the sequelae of COVID. And it's very, very important because it will help us to understand this infection better and handle the sequelae and symptoms better. Yes, they are going on. The studies are going on.
No, my question was that I'm sorry, I didn't mention that you're using yoga in gradually treating these patients. We'll have to observe them using using the current your yoga knowledge and meditation techniques and whatever things, tools that you have, non-traditional method or actually the traditional methods that we have, using that.
Yeah, I think that's very, very, very good question. And I think it is very, very important to use it. See, there are two things. Firstly, I mean, I'll just, that we publish also, but they didn't do yoga, but there are two key mechanisms. One is the stress, anxiety, depression, which dysregulates the immune system. The immunity goes down and then we are more susceptible to this infection. And that's what happened. There was so much fear when this pandemic came that because of the fear, we are getting the immune system, the immunity goes down and we are getting this infection. Okay. So that was one thing. The second thing was during the, once you get COVID, there is this exaggerated this exaggerated immune response in which there is increase in IL-6, which results in the cytokine storm. Again, as I told you, whether be it glaucoma, be it depression, or be it rheumatoid arthritis, yoga decreases IL-6 levels, and therefore that is the one which is actually increasing and causing the cytokine storm. So there also it will help. And again, the long-term sequelae are also because of various factors which are produced, like inflammation, which is persisting long-term. Therefore, it is affecting other organ systems. And I heard many people are getting arthritis. So definitely yoga is going to help, but I don't have such studies, but I'm sure there are many studies which are working on this aspect. And that's a very good thing that we should be able to handle them by adopting this yoga. That's a very, very good suggestion.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, on a lighter note, this is good to see that we are accepting that yoga is increasingly becoming the part of life. And so is the pandemic. So people are now preparing for the sequel, and maybe we are now getting ready for that fight between the pandemics and the human communities. So this is good. We should be ready. And of course, yoga is a precautionary measure to build your body and mind in a manner that future pandemics or possibility of future pandemics can be tackled easily. not like what has happened due to COVID. So
Right.
it's not only just the health issue, then with a lag of few months, it becomes the wealth issue. It becomes the material supply issue. It becomes several other ripple effects, right? So all that has to be understood, and we should be ready. We should keep at least our body, mind ready by doing regular yoga and pranayama and dhyan.
Right, right.
Great.
Hello. Yeah, good evening, Rima Dada. I have been into yoga and meditation since quite long. Say 1990, I've been doing meditation, vipassana, and all. I had also experienced the benefits of yoga and meditation earlier, but now for the last 5-6 years, uh, I was also having a lot of stresses in my life, like at my professional front and also relationship issues. So for the last 5 years, after I faced some stresses in the professional life with the colleagues, even though I am doing yoga, I'm not able to do yoga that efficiently and regularly, but still I am doing it. Meditation also, I'm not able to do properly because of the environment and relationship issues, and also income issues and professional instability and all that. So what I feel is yoga and meditation and naturopathy is good, but it has to be supplemented with the whatever life issues we are facing. They should also be simultaneously resolved slowly and steadily. Otherwise, yoga doesn't benefit that much. That is my experience. I don't know what you have to say about it.
You are right. Whenever we are doing just that, yoga will help us to maybe develop more equanimity, emotional resilience, handle our stress better. But definitely, when there are some issues which are plaguing our mind, sometimes it's more difficult to concentrate. I mean, to relax. I think you should do pranayama for longer periods. It will maybe help you find better solutions to the problems which are plaguing your mind right now, and maybe discuss with somebody, like discuss with some counselor, so that helps us to handle things better.
Yeah, I am doing all this, but I feel the energies are so low and suppressed that I am not able to express and also work with some of the healers and therapists and all that. I have been discussing with some psychologists and all that, but I still have to find the solution. I'm not able to, the energies are not able to take out and come out of whatever is suppressing me. So I need an answer. Actually, I've taken a test that is a sound test regarding the energy flow in my body. So that I have put it in the chat box. And if you want, I can send the complete report. And after seeing that report, if you can give me some suggestion how to improve the energy flow in my body and mind system, and what else I can do apart from whatever I'm doing. So this is what I would like to know, if I can send you that report so that you can give me some a very concrete solution.
Right. Yes, definitely. I'll read what is the problem, but definitely, sir, yoga will help you to build your emotional resilience. Helps us to think out things more carefully. Enhances our awareness. Sometimes we have so many. I'm not the right one to suggest this, but so many attachments, and we're not able to sort out problems when we have a lot of attachments. So look at it more, become more aware, become more committed, and then solve it. I think you need to have a good discussion with a counselor, and who will help you sort it out with clarity. And then you can, don't leave your yoga practices. Increase pranayama. It will help you to concentrate while doing meditation. I mean, it will help you to achieve a meditative state. Pranayama will help you a lot. Do that more.
Yeah, I understand. I'm doing this. Doing my whatever best I can do.
Yes,
but
and
if you want me,
yeah, Mr. Anup, I have sent your message to Dr. Rima through WhatsApp, and whatever reply she'll give after the session, I'll share it with you.
right? Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have plenty of questions now. One question is from Mr. Rajiv Ranjan. what are some of the general 2-3 asana and pranayam which one needs to practice every day? Especially many people are suffering from diabetics and BP. Any asana and pranayam for them? What do you suggest?
Actually, you read our papers. We have always given the protocol there. Again, I'm saying that please do not do general. Like for example, people with blood pressure, they should be careful by that when they do Kapalbhati. It should be done very, very gently. Forward bending posture should not be done because that will increase the BP. And these things, one has to be very careful. So please, when you start yoga, if you have some existing medical condition, please consult your the yoga instructors who are trained. They know which ones have to be prescribed for what. But for this, when you have diabetes, we make them do Surya Namaskar. We make them do this Kapalbhati is very effective because it increases the localized blood flow also. And there are many other, for example, there are Kriyas, there are Asanas and Pranayam, and we make them do Yoga Nidra. All these are helpful. So we have protocols for each of them. And there are also protocols, if you look at the Morarji Desai National Institute of Yoga, they have protocols for various disorders. So we are not working actually on diabetes and for hypertension, but I know this because we have patients with different ailments, and so our yoga instructor tells which ones to be done, which ones not to be done. So these things have to be kept in mind.
Yes, to add to it, it is really very critical that you take care of all the instructions from the yoga instructor and choose your yoga instructor also wisely, see their credentials. Government of India has provided them certain courses, some prescriptions that these are the processes that you should follow. So if you do through that, probably there is high chances of that you will not get any damage due to yoga, right? So you need to take care of that as well. Next question is coming from Mr. Girish Rampura. Can paralytic stroke patients also do yoga and improve vision affected from it?
Actually, I've not worked on this again, but yoga is for all. Like if you read the Iyengar school of yoga, they say if you have some difficulty, you can use certain props and do yoga. Any age, any ailment, Divyangjan, everybody can do yoga and it will benefit. But again, you would need, because you have had a paralytic stroke, you would need somebody's support to do it. For example, somebody to assist you for movement of various body parts, and that will help increase your blood flow, and that will help increase your neuromuscular coordination. It will definitely help.
Next question is from Mr. Rajiv Ranjan again. I have heard few expert and listen different views on same asana and pranayam, so it creates confusion. So my question is how to choose which one to do and which one not to do.
Actually, I think basically this is just like Hitesh said, you just need a trained yoga instructor to guide you. And then, like I told you, there are very nice protocols at this, the Morarji Desai National Institute of Yoga, where they have for different disorders. And then you just follow them because, and you have that these are the ones for blood pressure, these are the ones for diabetes, these are the ones for, other disorders. So you follow them, then there will be no confusion. Actually, there are different people who are trained by different schools of yoga. Some people lay emphasis more on meditation, some on pranayam, some on only asanas. So we have to do your meditation. When you say yoga, it's all the three, and then you choose we should be doing it under, once we learn it, then we follow it. But initially when we begin, do it by a trained instructor. He'll guide you, then there'll be no confusion.
Right. Better take precautions. Somebody has asked question, C Money. Mr. C Money has asked a question on chat box. Is any yoga class regularly happening on Zoom or online? If any class in future, please let us know. So basically, as we are here to project Defined Values Consultants as a Vishwaguru company, and we are undertaking Project Yug Parivartan, everything related to yoga is under our domain. So we are conducting Monday, Wednesdays and Fridays sessions on yoga, asana, pranayam and dhyan from 7:30 p.m. to 9 p.m., which includes 8:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. meditation 3 days a week, then a regular 1 hour meditation on Tuesdays 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. And that's also posted on my YouTube channel, wherein you can go and get introduced through to all the chakras and energize all of them. So I named it as chakra meditation. So just meditate on all those 7 chakras and you'll start getting healing. right? There is an internal mechanism in our body that if you can create something mentally and strengthen that thought, then it will automatically start coming into your physiology as well. So it's like self-hypnotizing and using the placebo technique to cure yourself and be your own doctor. Of course, I'm not here to kill the profession of the medical doctors, but at the same time, the diseases, if we call everything, any deformation in human body or mind as a disease, then actually we are passing through a huge pandemic, which is called as disease. And this can be cured by doing yoga, and several diseases can be prevented by doing yoga. So you make yoga part of your life. That will automatically help you save from various diseases. Yeah, Mr. Basavraj.
Sir, what about starting this yoga classes morning time?
Yeah, so based on the responses from people, we'll start more batches. So the idea is that over a period of 1 year, we should be having batches throughout the day, right? The complete round the clock yoga batches online. And if you can get your yoga coach near to your house and hire them on one-to-one basis, that would be the best. But yes,
Okay,
group coaching also helps. Group coaching and group meditation brings more synergy. So if something is available near your house, then please do it. Because
Sir,
all
one
our
more thing.
SLDP graduates are spread across the planet, so we can't have yoga classes, physical yoga classes everywhere. So we are doing that through online media.
Okay. One more thing, sir. Just
Yeah,
I believe there is no disease on the earth which cannot be cured with yoga and meditation. Meditation, it is the controlling the mind which is going outside, and when we able to flow it inside, all our questions can be answered, get answers. So in that way, any disease on the earth, I think it can be solved by the meditation, by the process of meditation. That is what I understood.
Yeah, philosophically correct. Philosophically, it is possible unless there is a permanent damage to any organ. You can recover from any medical condition, but it may take time. So, for example, if somebody is suffering from chronic cancer, which is in stage 3, so first of all, like advanced stage. So, first of all, doing yoga, pranayam, meditation in that health condition itself would be difficult. But if the willpower is high and person keeps doing it, then automatically the process will start getting reversed. So cancer is the deformation of cells, and when you do yoga, pranayam and meditation, it will reform the cells to their original shape. But it may be a very gradual, very slow process in case of chronic diseases. For mild diseases, lifestyle diseases, it will give instant result. You do yoga for just a week and you will see the difference yourself. You don't even need to go for any pathological test to get it verified. Your internal feeling will tell you that yes, you are recovering. You are becoming more healthier than earlier. So 7 days of yoga practice, you see and observe yourself.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so no more questions. So let me now bring it to a closure, formal closure, and not a closure forever. It's a closure for a new beginning. So thanks a lot, Dr. Rima Dada. It was really a very enchanting, enlightening, and empowering session. And all that has happened through divine grace. We have not done extra effort to bring you on board, telling us, sharing the knowledge with all of us. But yes, this should not be considered as one-off transaction between you and us. It should be continued. And there are several more forums that we are creating, various summits, global summits, which are coming our way every month. And it will be continuous till the time we are able to accomplish the entire objective of Project Yug Parivartan, which is to bring the golden age ecosystem, golden age to the world. So that means no disease. So that should be our motto, that even if it requires us to eliminate the entire medical industry, pharmaceutical industry, and deploy them into some other meaningful task, right? Because unfortunately, this is true. If we have more doctors and more lawyers and judges increasing in the ecosystem, it is not the signal of ecosystem being healthy. Instead, it is a signal that the ecosystem is becoming more unhealthier than earlier. So doctor, lawyers, judges, these are emergency professions. People should be deployed into emergency professions only if there is an emergency. So if we can recover from all of that, then all doctors, all people can go into some different profession. And this is good to see a trend happening that people in the healthcare industries are moving more from from cure to prevention. So yoga is very much part of the domain of a medical practitioner. They must understand that yes, keeping people healthy is their profession, their why, their purpose of being in that profession. So if yoga can help, they should definitely do it. And I'm very delighted to see Dr. Rima getting into this zone, because earlier we were thinking that doctors are against yoga because it is counterproductive to their profession. But this is really heartening to see, and more such doctors should move towards prescribing yoga, right? I have personally experienced, one of my SCLDP graduate is also an MBBS MD doctor, and he said a very beautiful thing once to me. He said that I have changed the profession, but few things remained same. So I asked what? He said that earlier also I was writing prescription. Now also I am writing prescription, but earlier I was writing prescriptions for medicines. Now I am writing prescriptions for demedication, right? Removing the medication. So same thing is he's diagnosing, he's prescribing, but instead of adding more medicines to people's life, he is reducing the medicines from their life. So this is something which we need to understand. One more thing we need to understand is Ahar hi aushadhi hai. If we do not consider our food as medicine, then the medicines will become our food. So it is important. We must take care of this beautiful body, which is like even the scripture says, "Bade bhagya manush tan pawa, sur durlabh sab granth hi gawa." कि बहुत भाग्य से ये मनुष्य तन मिलता है, देवताओं को भी ये दुर्लभ है, तो इसको वेस्ट ना जाने दें, इसका ख्याल रखें। ये आत्मा का व्हीकल है, तो इसको सर्विस रखना, इसको हेल्दी रखना हम सबका कर्तव्य है, जब तक कि हमें आत्मज्ञान की प्राप्ति नहीं हो जाती। उसके बाद बॉडी के अंदर वो सारे हीलिंग मैकेनिज्म अपने आप ही इनेबल हो जाते हैं आत्मज्ञान से, जिससे कि व्यक्ति हेल्दी रहता है। तो इन्हीं शब्दों के साथ मैं एक बार और डॉक्टर रीमा दादा का धन्यवाद करता हूं, और मैं चाहता हूं कि वो हमारे फ्यूचर सेशंस में भी आती रहें और अपने ज्ञान से हम सबको उत्प्रोत करती रहें। सभी को नमस्कार, डॉक्टर रीमा को नमस्कार। थैंक यू वेरी मच।
नमस्कार।